All right, we are on air and live. Today is Thursday, so it is Backdrop Day. Happy Backdrop Day, everybody. We're here to talk to you about Backdrop CMS, which is a low-cost CMS specifically for nonprofits and small and medium-sized businesses because we believe that not everybody can afford the change that's coming with Drupal 8. We're here to create a system that has Drupal 8 comparable features on an architecture that's more similar to that of Drupal 7. As we're making that system, we're also going to be fixing bugs, so bugs that existed in Drupal 7 and bugs that were introduced in Drupal 8, and any other bugs that we find along the way. Where possible, we're going to be trying to simplify existing systems, and that'll be while minimizing API change and adding new features, also when not very much API change is required. So new features with new APIs are okay. New features that require changing APIs need to be carefully measured against our principles. Our timeline for releasing Backdrop 1.0 is that we'd like to have it out this fall. This fall starts, I think, in 2 weeks. So we need to be wrapping up all the things that we're working on, trying to get everything ready, and hopefully we'll be done. Before the end of the year, we'll be out and start working on Contrib. After we release Backdrop 1.0.0, we're going to issue regular releases. So every 4 months or so, we'll gather a list of things that we want to be in the next release and work towards getting those done. And releases will happen on time. So if we don't get the features in, that's fine. We'll just release wherever we are, and the feature will get pushed till the next release. So people can count on releases on a regular schedule. Even if features don't make individual releases, the release doesn't get pushed. In terms of what we're working on right now, we've got 3 major projects that are release blockers. The first one is the Blocks and Layouts initiative. This is a replacement for Drupal's page layout problem that it's had for forever. And we're trying to put in a really fancy drag and drop panels-like version with a new user interface so that it's easy to use and makes sense for people. Nate, I know you've been doing a ton of work on this. Do you want to give us an update on Blocks and Layouts?
Yeah, sure. So things are coming along really, really nicely, actually. I gave a demo at LA Drupal Camp last weekend, which went moderately okay, but I think that we need to put out a new video demonstrating where we are currently. As always, you can get the code of where we currently are by going to issue 86 in the Backdrop issue queue, and you can follow along with the status there. But even though there haven't been a whole lot of updates to the issue itself, like I've been doing code pushes pretty regularly. And so if you want to do a pull from the branch that is linked to in issue 86, you can see where we are currently. That status is basically that, well, since last week, we now have menu access level control working so that you can restrict access to all layouts at a particular path, similar to like Page Manager's access control system. Menu links you can now add and save into the menu system like you would with Page Manager. I stripped out all kind of remaining references to CTools or Page Manager or any Drupal 6 code, with the exception of things that that we still need to port. So there's a number of plugins that still need to be ported. Things like you can place, let's see, I know you can use things like, you can use conditions to say like only show this thing on certain node types or certain comment types, but you can't yet do something like display fields, like break out a field and display it anywhere you want. But that actually isn't that difficult to implement, it just needs to be ported. So the only things left from Drupal 7 CTools / panels / Page Manager is just a little bit of porting that still needs to be done, just a couple of plugins. And I think like our initial version isn't going to be able to do things like separate out forms, like lay out a form. So we're removing that functionality at this point, but other than that, it's looking really, really good. It's already, I mentioned this the past couple of weeks, but we have it fully replacing regions and layouts and all of the theme capabilities at this point. So it is effectively like panels everywhere on every page of your site, which is really, really awesome. So keep following along with that issue. I'll post another YouTube video, hopefully before the end of the week, showing where we are currently, because it's something that is much easier to see than it is to hear about.
Okay, that's great. Another thing that we're working on is getting the views module in core. We currently have views in core, and we have a bunch of the pages that are generated by views in core. So things like the front page and taxonomy term listings. Things that we need help with are getting actions converted into our VBO system so that we can get our administrative listings converted to views too. That is not a release blocker, but it is something that I think would be really great to have in the first release. So it's lower on our priority list, but something that we still want to get done. So if we have anyone else work on that, we would love help with that. Other things that are release blockers is getting our configuration management tools fully converted. So we currently have the config management subsystem in core, and we have a bunch of other systems converted to use CMI, but we don't have all of them. The big ones that would prevent a release in particular are content types and fields. And if we don't really get those converted, then we don't really have CMI. So we need to get those moved over. And then there's a bunch of other little ones that are less crucial, but we also need to get those cleaned up. I think almost all of our variables are converted. I know last week I was doing a bunch of work on theme system stuff, and I moved most of the theme system variables that we're keeping into config, so we're getting closer. But there are a few variables left, and then the rest of it are just subsystems that need also to be converted. In terms of other things we're working on, we have a couple of issues that are helping us keep up with what's going on in Drupal. To match with what's going on in Drupal 7, we have one issue that includes all of our security fixes that we need, and another one that just includes all of the other commits that were made to Drupal 7 that we want to make sure that we also have in Backdrop so that we're not behind where Drupal 7 was when we need to release. And we're pretty close on the Drupal 7 issues. It looks like we have 11 of those left, which is probably what needs to go into 731, or all the stuff that happened in most recent version. We haven't gotten those in yet. And then there's 3 security issues that are also left. So if anyone wants help with those, we could use help with that. And then in terms of Drupal 8 backports, we originally thought we were going to review all 8,000 plus issues that have happened, commits between when we forked Backdrop and where Drupal 8 is now. But since then, we've decided that that's just way too much change to look at, especially because we aren't going to be doing most of the things that they're doing. So instead, we chose several important subsets of things that we wanted to also work on. So we've got HTML5 issues. We've got almost all of those wrapped up. We have CSS issues. I removed that issue from this list because we got the last ones of those wrapped up in the last week. I closed the meta issue, and instead I created another issue, if you guys were looking at the agenda, which is a ready for final review section. So this is stuff where we just kind of do one review at a really high level just to make sure things like all variables are converted to CMI or all CSS is adhering with our new coding standards. And so as we get all of these issues done that we're either porting from Drupal 7 or that we've opened ourselves, as soon as we get done with that, then we'll say, okay, we need one more issue that's just a review just to make sure that we've gotten it all. So CSS is done, which is great, and now we just need a kind of a wholesale review to make sure that any of the stuff that we've moved in from contrib, like for views or admin menu, is also matching our new coding standards, as well as the stuff that we have in core that has been changed. We want to make sure it hasn't been changed to look like Drupal 8, but it's instead been changed to look like Backdrop. So that's really great. We also have a collection of JavaScript issues. These all have had JS hint run on them with our new coding standards to make sure that they look nice, and we've gotten most of those changes in. There's a handful of those that are left. So if anyone is a JavaScript expert and wants to help us clean up our JavaScript code, there's a couple of those that are left. This also isn't going to block release. Sloppy code isn't a big enough thing to prevent release happening, but obviously it would be better if our code wasn't sloppy. So we could use some help on those also if you want to help there. Other things that we're working on that we would like to get done before we release are separating Backdrop's identity from Drupal. Obviously, being a fork from Drupal, we start off with something that looks a lot like Drupal, and we have a couple of places that we're trying to make ourselves look different. We've already included our new installer branding, which looks great, but we want the rest of the administration theme to take on Backdrop look. And I think probably also renaming the administration theme so it's not called 7, which would be confusing. I mean, it's already confusing. It's confusing if there's not a version 7 for it to match. Would also be really good. So we'll probably do that in the same kind of rebrand the administration theme issue. Some other things that we're working on are cleaning up the theme system to make it easier for people to work with. There's a lot of stuff that I did in the Twig initiative that involved just kind of making things work in a way that made more sense that we can also do in Backdrop. A lot of the changes didn't actually have anything to do with Twig. They are just kind of sensible improvements, and we've got a list of those that needs some attention too. I made a little bit of progress on that last week. I've got a couple of pull requests. I think one of them is even passing tests, which is pretty great. And we'll keep working on making those better too. And then other things that are really important are improvements to user experience in Backdrop. As we move down market, we're going to be having more and more end users using the tool, and that means that our interface has to get better because we're going to be competing more seriously with WordPress. And WordPress's user experience is pretty great, so there's a couple of things that we need to just kind of take a look at and Backdrop and make sure that we're getting right. There's a bunch of stuff that we know is wrong that existed from Drupal that we can just kind of clean up. There's already existing Drupal issues. In most cases, there's existing Drupal patches. So that's really great. We can just kind of knock those out. A bunch of great stuff has been done in Drupal 8, and we need that too. But there's also a bunch of other stuff that we're introducing because we're Backdrop that we also need to make sure that we get right, like terminology in the layouts interface and stuff like that. So we'll do a kind of a holistic review of that once we get closer to release 2. But there is a meta issue 127 that includes some terminology changes that we should consider doing, and a bunch of other stuff kind of along those lines. We also would like to add a rich text editor into core. This is not something that's a release blocker because we think we can add it after the initial release without breaking APIs, but obviously it would be great if we could get that in for Backdrop 1.0.0. So there's a section in this meeting for weekly updates from the PMC where we can notify you of any issues that have become heated in the issue queue that have needed further discussion and a decision to be made. But we don't have any of those this week, so in the future, listen for PMC updates. But for now, no updates, no blockers. Other things that we're working on in Backdrop World that aren't the project itself include the infrastructure around having an open source project. We have an API website, which Luke got all set up for us, which is great. It actually checks our code base. Not real time. I think we're going to set it up so that it'll do a checkout of our code base every hour or so, but I think that's fair considering the rate of commit we're working on right now.
I think at this point it already automatically updates. He has it on a cron job, just a git pull.
As of last week, that wasn't actually working, I don't think.
Oh.
So I think it was using its local copy of the code base and never updated, but we're trying to get it to set up to either do a pull on a cron or, yeah, there's a couple of other ideas, I think, but we can touch base with him. And then let's see. So we've got a new content type on the API site for change notices. And so we can start getting people to start populate those if we wanted to, especially the ones that are sort of exact copies of change notices that are on Drupal's site. So Backdrop forked from early Drupal 8, so there are already change records from a lot of those changes that went into Drupal 8. On Drupal's website, they're probably very different now than they were at that point in time when we forked, so we might need to do a little kind of rewording on those, but it might be a great starting point for us. So if we have anyone who wants to help Backdrop but isn't confident in working in code, we could definitely use some triage on the change notice list. So if you wanted to look at our issue queue and search for things that need change notices, that would be a great place to start. And then I'm not sure how we would get a master list of all of the change records that existed on Drupal.org at the time that we forked. But if we could figure that out, that would probably be a great place to start there too, just to make sure that we have all the stuff we need. Other stuff we're working on, update server. So when your Backdrop website needs to talk to the mothership and find out if it is up to date or not, we need to make sure we have a mothership for it to talk to. So I know we've got a discussion about how we're going to handle that in our issue queue. We also need someone to actually build the tool that will handle it. So if someone's interested in setting that up, we would love some help there. And we also need a GitHub service. So this is so that people who create contrib modules can register their projects as being part of Backdrop. And then Backdrop's main website will search the GitHub queue for a list of those modules and pull them in so that we can get a single place to search for modules and themes that are for Backdrop. So I know we've had a little bit of progress on that, but it would be good to get that up and running too. Obviously, it would be great to have Backdrop core first, so that's where our priorities are, but we will eventually need that service too. And then our own primary website is also going to get a little revamp in time with our release. So we have contacted a designer, and we're working on getting some designs done for a new version of the site. And then that, hopefully, if we can get someone who wants to actually build it for us, that would also be really helpful between now and the end of fall. So we don't have designs yet, so it's not urgent, but that is coming up. So if you want to help us with that, I know John offered to help us with that before. Maybe we should reach out to him and see if he's still interested. And then let's see. So we've got a couple of sprints coming up, obviously, every day on Thursday. If you want to join us in IRC, we have a little sprint here. Last week, I know Luke was in IRC, and he was like, am I in the right place? He was in the right place. It just happened to be that we were working, so I didn't respond to him quickly enough. But we're in there. If you ping us by name, like if you have a specific question, you type one of our names, it'll make our machines beep, and then we'll notice it. So if you're in there and you're hanging out and you want our attention, just type our name, and we'll notice more quickly. But we are usually there all day on Thursdays. In real life, we're also going to have a sprint at Bad Camp, which is November 6th through 9th. There is going to be a core developer summit that will happen for all days of the camp, and we'll try and commandeer one table in that space for backdrop work. If we get enough people, we might be able to take over two, but we'll see. We'll see who we get. But yeah, so there's a sprint for everything Drupal related at Bad Camp, which will be great. Other things that we have coming up, we are going to be giving our first backdrop talk to a non-Drupal audience coming up here in 2 weeks at the HTML5 Developer Conference. So that'll be fun. We just get to go talk to people who are working in the web world and show off what we've built. Last time I did a talk for them, they were super impressed by views and panels. So I think showing them backdrop with views and panels and core will be a pretty cool demo. We can kind of give them a walk through what you can do with it and then do a little demo of how you can build things really quickly, and I'm hoping that'll get some oohs and ahs, so we'll look forward to that. And we also have the Pacific Northwest Drupal Summit coming up in October. I've submitted a session there. I'm not sure if it's been accepted or not, but we will plan on going if it is, which is great, and probably if it's not as well. And then Bad Camp hits off November 6th through 9th. And then we have, let's see, DrupalCon is coming up too. Is that in February? DrupalCon Los Angeles? I think it is.
I don't know.
I'm not sure what the environment is going to be in the Drupal community, if they're going to be interested in hearing about Backdrop at DrupalCon, but we will put it on the tentative agenda and see. If someone asks, we talk. That's usually how it goes. If we get invited to a specific event because people there want to hear what we have to say, then we'll say it. But we don't usually submit Backdrop sessions to Drupal events unless we have been specifically asked to. So we'll see what the community wants, and if they want to hear what we have to say, then we'll say it.
Yeah, it's not until May. It doesn't look like
May.
it's got a long time.
What is it that happens in February? Do you remember?
I don't know. You mean other than Bad Camp? Oh wait, that's November. My bad.
India, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, we'll figure it out. We don't have anything on schedule for next year yet. Okay, I know I've got a lot of stuff to work on today. Nate, you probably have a bunch of stuff too. So I think maybe we should wrap this meeting since there's no one else here for any questions. Yeah, we'll be in IRC if you missed the meeting for whatever reason and have questions for us later. You'll know how to find us.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Okay, bye, guys.